So before we get started with the question and answer, for those of you who are planning on attending the Body Power here in a few weeks, the Epic Fitness is holding the Epic Fitness Summit. And the cool thing about this is that, well, first of all, I have the honor of being able to present alongside guys like Alan Aragon, Brad Schoenfield, Brett Contreras, Lane Norton. So some of the best minds, fitness minds in the world will be there. If you're planning on attending the Body Power Expo, I would really, really encourage you guys to make your way that way. Again, it just really, I think more than anything, besides all the really cool information that will be dispersed at the summit, I think more than anything, it's just a celebration of how far that evidence-based sector of the fitness industry has come during the last 10 years. So we would really appreciate if you guys stopped by and supported the movement. So yeah, without further ado, we'll get on with this question and answer series, and hopefully we can make these just a routine thing here on the channel once again. All right, question and answer series. How did we get here? I posted this up on Instagram, and I have a fly here now. It's okay. It's what makes it great. No, I'm gonna keep trolling you during the whole video. How did we get here? I posted this on Instagram, and I wanted to get 12 questions that met a specific criteria. If your question didn't make it on here, it's not my fault. It's because Melissa picked the questions. I wanted to go with Melissa because, again, she has a pretty good understanding as to how things work. She doesn't know a lot about like the finer details of things, but she's, I think, knows enough to pick questions that she can anticipate there's going to be a good answer on the other end. So, oh wow, I went back on accident. Okay, so question number one, let me go back up. If your question didn't make it on here, again, just I suggest you to keep trying maybe. I want to make this a regular thing, and I want to have perhaps even guests on this question and answer series. And I have quite a few, I have access to quite a few brilliant minds like here in the neighborhood. Bryce Lewis, maybe even a Brian Miner. So yeah, maybe we'll have him here on this, again, this soon to be famous couch. So yeah, question one, how should we juggle the big three lifts and secondary exercises for bodybuilding, and should they utilize the heavier weights year round? So once again, how should one juggle the big three lifts and the secondary exercises for bodybuilding, and should they utilize the heavier weights year round? I think, first of all, the big assumption here is if we need to take part in the big three lifts. I think as a powerlifter, yes, but as a bodybuilder, no. I think when it comes to your primary movements, your compound movements, whatever it is that you like to call them, again, you don't have to bench press if you just don't like to bench press, if you don't feel that you're naturally meant for that movement, if you just don't really progress all that well. If you're a powerlifter, well, you have to squat, bench, and dead, but again, your bench press can be replaced with an incline dumbbell. It can be replaced with a hammer strength incline. So again, big compounds are important, but at the same time, as a bodybuilder, you get to pick. It doesn't have to be a deadlift. It's not just sumo or conventional. It can be a trap bar deadlift, or you don't have to deadlift at all. So we don't have to do the big three lifts. That's not, it's not a must. It's not an essential to it's an essential component to a complete bodybuilding program. Last but not least, should we use heavier weights year round? I think most bodybuilders could benefit from, even if you do use a format where, say, a fat type format where you have your strength days and you have your volume days. I do think that you should have certain training blocks throughout the year where you're focusing more on strength, during this leg, more on volume here, and then maybe we even have a sandbaggy recovery leg here where we're not, really trying to progress all that assertively on anything. So no, the answer is no. I don't think we need to do that year round. Almost every other sport, again, kind of breaks things down that way, where this part of the year is dedicated to this part of the year is dedicated to that. Sure, you're working on all skills that make you a complete athlete in that sport, but there's certainly certain legs where we're focusing more on certain things, and the same should be said with bodybuilding. Currently, I find myself in a pretty intensive volume block where I'm not necessarily, really looking to grind out heavy reps all that frequently, but we're pushing the volume pretty high up there where I'm going to need a recovery leg pretty soon here. So question one, good question, by the way, really good question. So I think that's a huge assumption, is just the fact that we need to squat, bench, and deadlift. I front squat, and I use incline dumbbells, for now anyways. All right, let's keep scrolling down and find the other ones. I will get better at looking for, at finding these. Okay. Should have wrote these down for me, Melissa.
I was trying to. You told me no.
I know I did. So yeah, for someone who is and one more time, the question is, can you be at maintenance and still gain muscle? Yes, you can. Two scenarios: someone who is skinny fat, as they say, and they are looking to put on. Again, they're looking to put on muscle, but the issue is that they're not as lean as they would like. For that person, yeah, I would say perhaps go with the recomp and hope that you have a very good response to weight training and a high protein diet. So yeah, I think for the beginner that is skinny fat, perfect. And then also for someone who at some point was in good shape and now they find themselves out of shape, it's probably best to get rolling at maintenance. But again, if you're someone who wants to push to the extremes of muscle gain, I think you're probably best off going through some strategic overfeeding cycles, okay? So yeah, going on bulks, as they say. So that's question number 3. Let's get to 4. All right. Should we always hit our protein goal even if we have already overeaten on fats and carbs for that day? It depends. It depends on the context of the situation. Are you like a week out from your show, right? One thing I would say is I don't think we should focus so much on days that we blow it. I think what we need to focus on more than anything is, what is the general trend here? Do we find ourselves in this position quite frequently? I would focus more so on that rather than what is happening on a day-to-day basis. So if it happens once in a blue moon, just forget about it, move on. Don't overthink in that scenario. Let's see. Question number 5. As a strength-based athlete, would sets of 20 on squats in the 50 to 60% range be beneficial for hypertrophy work, and how will it affect strength? I think
sets of 20. Yeah, they'll definitely, because
there's a strong volume component to doing sets of 20. It's definitely going to help you get jacked, but I think there's more practical rep ranges and there's more practical movements, I think, than a squat, especially if your goal is to have, I guess, maybe you're going through a getting jacked phase as a power lifter. I would probably encourage the lifter to, hey, let's work a bit more
in, say, anywhere between the 6 to 12 rep range, maybe as high as 15, and let's pick a
leg press, because I think the leg press is a lot easier. And I think one thing about high rep squats is that quite often what ends up being, and not so much for a strength athlete who, again, your technique is probably pretty good. Your technique is not going to be, I guess, the thing that's holding you back the most, but for sure the fact that your torso is going to be holding up weight for an extended period of time. So your torso ends up being the limiting factor here. So in that case, I would go with something that's, again, it's a bit more practical, such as a leg press, a hack squat. So yeah, I would probably, instead of doing something where we're doing 2 sets of 20 on the squats, perhaps a more practical approach would be something like, 3 sets of 12 to 15 on the leg press, both when it comes to the rep ranges and the movement. And yeah, again, I think holding a barbell for 20 reps at some point is and can interfere with the progress you make on that movement. So yeah, I think perhaps somewhere tone down the reps a bit, and I think machines kind of rule when it comes to the more intensive rep ranges. All right, so that's question number 5. Question number 6. Here we go. It's right there. How should you revolve training around sports? High school plus club level practices at least 3 times a week. I think your off season and your on season training should definitely have slightly different focuses. I'm assuming that you're kind of in a similar situation that I was in when I was actually starting off with my weight training, where I would make progress in the off season, and then track would start up, and I would regress. And I think I could have saved myself from regressing so much had I perhaps used loads in the training volume that was more based around just trying to maintain than actually trying to continually progress during the track season. So yeah, I think make gains when you're not in season, and when you are in season, it should definitely take a backseat to the sport. I think you're going to end up burning yourself out on both ends if you try to progress. You're going to not be you're not going to perform as well as you like on the field, and then your weight training is going to take a hit anyway. So minimize how big of a hit it takes by focusing on maintaining during the season. So that's question 6. Question 7. Since your whole program is auto-regulated and emphasizes weekly volume, is it safe to say that weight training is a lot like flexible dieting in that aspect, that it doesn't necessarily need to be as strict as people once thought? Yes, I do. I do. And again, I think having done this for a long enough time, for example, in the off season, I don't necessarily count my macros. I more or less try to hang around a certain caloric intake. And again, I don't think I could have done this 10 years ago, for example. So again, I think the longer you do this, the more, I guess, flexibility you earn. I do think that perhaps back when I go back to my bro meal plan menus and my very strict, this is how it has to be, training setups, maybe they weren't necessary, but they definitely served a purpose. And as time went on, I can, I guess, trust my gut instinct a bit more on some occasions. And yeah, like anything else, I think over time you kind of learn to make more dynamic calls and make the right calls. So yeah, perfectly well said on your part. Let's see, next question. Where are you, Joseph Butler? Okay, I love it when people use their actual names, Melissa, even though I don't. Okay, Joseph Butler, in your opinion, what's the most accurate way to determine baseline calories for the beginning of a cut? I think for most people, so baseline calories, so we're assuming that we already know whereabouts our maintenance roams, and if we were eating at a surplus, we have a general idea of where that sits at. I think it kind of depends on the person, but anywhere between a 25 to 35, cutting 25 to 35% of your calories, assuming that you were eating at a surplus, is a good place to start. And again, you adjust it. If you're losing too quick, up those calories. If you're not losing at all, then cut the carbs. Or not cut the carbs, but cut the calories. So yeah, I would say a good place to start is that making cutting off 25 to 35% of your calories is a great place to get the ball rolling. And then from there, you just kind of analyze what things look like. Are you able to keep up with the workload you were using in the off season? Because I think you should when you start a cut. and are you losing at a reasonable rate? So those are the top two things that you want to look at. So that's question 7. Question 8. No, that was question 8. Wow, we're moving fast. We're on 8 now. So we're past hump day. Where is Caleb? Caleb made it on here. Caleb is a friend of mine. For the goals of strictly muscle size, how necessarily is it to lift in the lower rep ranges? You know, I think so long as you progress, what rep range you pick doesn't really necessarily matter. And again, just purely anecdotal. When I first started out, I liked 7s. I thought anytime I got under 7, I didn't get enough of a pump, so I didn't do anything under 7. But if I went up too high, it was too intensive for me at the time, and I didn't like the burn. Melissa, the burn. It burns, bro. So when it comes to picking the rep ranges that you want to progress on, it doesn't matter too much. And I think you might even find that different movements, certain rep ranges might be more practical. But no, you don't have to. You don't have to necessarily, like, for my folks out there who are just pure bodybuilders, and my folks out there that are very small frame, such as me, we break easy. Perhaps focusing on the intermediate rep ranges, and by intermediate I mean anywhere between 6 to 12, I think is fine. And sometimes in the cases of some folks, maybe even a bit higher. So no, you don't have to. Play in the lower rep ranges if you don't want to, and the same thing goes for the uber high rep ranges that a lot of guys like to mess around with. I've known bodybuilders on both, natural bodybuilders on both sides, that have made some great progress. Guys that work in those Pukeville rep ranges, and then guys like a Jeff Rodriguez, for example, who did a lot of his work in the 4 to 6 rep range for the longest time. Brad Loomis comes to mind too. So no, pick a rep range that you like, and rep ranges that you like and that are practical to you, and progress. That's question 9. Let's see, question 10. So where are you? Mastro Macros. Here we go. Occlusion training. When do you recommend it? So I like using occlusion training when something hurts. My elbows tend to be moody, so if they're feeling not so great, I'll bring out the wraps. And then also when I'm in the middle of contest prep, sometimes after I get through my first few movements and it's time to go do calves or time to go do arms, I'm out of gas, and sometimes my head might not be right, or my body might not be right when it comes to doing my typical using my typical loads, and it's a great time to use it. So besides injured athletes, I think it's also good if you want to prevent injury, if you feel like maybe I shouldn't push it right now, or if it's just not a day where heavy or heavier was in the cards. So yeah, I'm glad that this kind of training, I think initially people thought assumed many things about it, but it's starting to, I think it's starting to become a bit more mainstream. So I definitely think it's a wonderful tool and a wonderful language to speak. So it's something to have just in case you need. So definitely at least worth learning for most people. Okay, question number 11. Do you think that strength gains in accessory movements are as important as strength gains in the big threes, especially when it comes to achieving muscle growth? It's not that it's not as important. It's just not going to happen quite as rapidly, and I think people tend to not be as patient when it comes to progressing on single joint movements. So like, let's talk curls, for example. Say you're curling 20 pounds, the next dumbbell is 25. When you think about it, that's a 25% increase in load. That's quite a bit. You would never go, you would never do that with say a squat where you go from 400 pounds for sets of 5 to, hey, let's do 500 with sets of 5. So I think one thing you have to understand is that you have to be a bit more patient, that it's very easy to deviate from good form, if you will, on these movements. So yeah, I think it is important and you can and will progress. There's different expectations when it comes to like at what rate, basically. So that's question 11, and one last one. Crazy Dogs will be rolling in here any second now. No, I think he erased it, by the way, Melissa. Oh no, there he goes. Okay, who is Peter? I know who Peter is. Thank you for contributing, Peter. How long do you have to reverse diet before your metabolism is repaired and is at maintenance point once again? So I think that happens a bit faster. I know it happens a bit faster than I would have told you just a few years ago. It definitely differs from person to person. Haley has metabolic damage, so she's a little cranky. All right. So I think more than anything, the biggest concern here is we have to take into account that we have lost some weight. So obviously, let's just say you started your cut at 180, now you're 165. You're not going to need as many calories. So you have to take that into consideration, and then also how good you are at adhering to your diet after a contest. So for some people, being too strict afterwards or going straight to maintenance perhaps isn't the best idea. For some of those folks, they tend to blow it. So if you're one of those folks, I would say first of all, get a little bit leaner than you would like to be, so that it's kind of there's kind of a buffer there, so that if you do overeat a bit, it doesn't necessarily cover up some of the work some of the fat loss that did take place the weeks prior. But the biggest thing is take into consideration that you're smaller, setting your maintenance right around that. So if typically your maintenance is, we'll say 14 calories per pound, plug that into your new body weight, maybe a bit less if you do feel like you have taken some steps back metabolically. And then also just be realistic with, again, how perfect you can be after a fat loss diet. Because whether it be contest prep or just a summer fat loss diet, we all tend to be a little bit wacky after going through a fat loss period. So yeah, I would say two main things would be just take into account that you're smaller, and then set yourself up with the right combination of structure, but at the same time you don't want to be too strict, because that never ends well for someone who's gone through a successful fat loss phase. That's it. We'll leave it here, and we'll let the dog show take over. Look forward to doing this with you guys again. We'll probably move this. Haley!